Greetings, YouTube. I talk about harassment, misogyny, racism, homophobia, transphobia, theistic bigotry on this channel on a regular basis. And when I do that, I frequently get people that want clear, hard definitions of what harassment and bigotry and prejudice are. They want things in nice, neat little boxes. They want to know that if they do action 1, they will get result A. And every time they do react, they do the event 1, whatever that is. That act is whatever that act is. If they do 1, they will always get reaction A. Humans don't work that way. Context matters. And how other people interpret things is dependent on their life experiences. Just as in when a person does an act, that act 1 I mentioned, their life experiences have led up to them doing that act. Now they could be doing that act innocently. Their life experiences have shown them that this particular act is not problematic, when in actuality it is. They could be doing it deliberately. They could be a bigot of some variety. And they're doing this to push someone's button because they're an asshat. They are fully aware and cognizant of what they are doing. The person receiving that act doesn't know which you are. They have no way to judge prior to that moment which you have been. Now, if they've known you for a long time, that helps. That puts that into the context dimension. So if someone they've known for a long time that has never done anything problematic does something problematic, they are far more likely to say, hey, this is problematic and this is why, and kind of give them the benefit of the doubt that they're doing this out of sincere and genuine ignorance. Whereas if the person who's doing that act is someone they have encountered before, and that person has a long history of doing problematic things or out bigoted things, they are not likely to give them the benefit of the doubt. They're just going to go, oh, look it, the asshat's acting like an asshat again. And if they can, they'll move away from you or block you or whatever the G+ version of that there is. But the context matters. And when you're talking to someone on the internet, someone that you've never encountered, you don't ever know which it is at first. It's taken me sometimes long exchanges, 5, 10, 15 exchanges with someone, before I finally was able to pry out that person's agenda. Sometimes I've been wrong. Sometimes we actually are allies and we're just arguing over semantics. But a lot of the time, we aren't allies. And the person finally reveals themselves when they've gotten flustered enough and emotionally committed enough to finally let slip their bias and agenda. And then I usually go, okay, now I see your bias. Have a nice day. And I walk away. Because once I'm faced with that bigotry, it's pointless to continue. Another thing I encounter a lot of times is that they want those definitions to be hard because it's easy. It's simple. It would make their life flow more smoothly if they knew every time they did act 1 they would get reaction A. But humans don't work that way. And it is not my place as a male to define for women what is sexual harassment. It is not my place as a straight person to define for the gay community what is harassment and bigotry. It is not my place as a cisgender person to define for a transgender person what is bigotry or prejudice. Do you see where this is coming from? It is not my place as a white guy to define for the people of color of the world what is bigotry and prejudice and discrimination. I cannot define those things for them. It is up to them to define it. Now, this means that someone who considers themselves to be completely blameless, they have never done anything intentionally wrong, could find themselves in a bind, could find themselves having people look at them and saying, that was problematic. And suddenly they're on the defensive. Suddenly now they have committed a transgression through sincere ignorance. And they don't like that feeling. They don't want people to point out to them that they're being problematic. They don't want to be made uncomfortable. Too bad. I've been made uncomfortable by my own acts. I've had to own them. I have done problematic things. I have said problematic things. And I've had to own them. And you know what comes out of that process? Growth. If you're smart, maybe even if you're lucky and you're wise, you'll learn from that. And you move forward. And you try never to do it again. And if you slip, because you're human, you apologize. And you say, okay, yeah, this was covered in the past. I made an effort not to, and this is how I tried to make it, and I apologize that I didn't get it right. And yes, that puts you on the defensive. Yes, that puts you in the passive position. Too bad. All growth is painful. That's its very nature. As the Buddhists would say, life is suffering. But out of that suffering can come enlightenment. And if we help each other, at least those who are willing to be helped, we can further the causes of social justice. Now, for the bigots of the world who are doing this intentionally and just trying to show to the world that they are asshats and they're trying to desperately shore up their bastion, the bulwarks of the privilege that they have enjoyed for their entire lives, you will lose. The fight may be long and bloody, but you will lose. Social justice will progress. And just as in 1967, legally, discrimination against interracial couples was struck down, now that is far more socially acceptable. But there are still people in America that are opposed to interracial couples. We call them bigots. And someday, same-sex marriage and transgender rights and gay employment laws and every other thing and sexism and misogyny of our current culture will become less and less common. And there will always be a hardcore number of people who will champion these causes to the end because they are bigots. But they will become far fewer and far more noticeable. Their bigotry will stand in stark contrast to the acceptance of the community around them. It will become easier to identify them, which is why I love the First Amendment so much. We can do this, but the process is going to involve a lot of people being uncomfortable, a lot of people feeling suddenly that they've done a wrong because they've done a wrong. It may not have been intentional. It may not be something that they ever knew was wrong. And that's unfortunate. That ignorance of a law is no defense, and ignorance of a social moray is no defense. When you step on someone else through ignorance, it is not your job to stand there and defend yourself while you're standing on them. It is to step back, help them up, and apologize for what you've done. And I encounter far too often here on the internet that when someone steps on another person, they stand there and they justify the person beneath their foot. They justify the act of holding them down and say that it's a good thing. Sometimes they blame the person lying on the ground beneath their foot for not having the strength to stand. And those people sicken me. And they make me very sad. Because there's a hole inside them. And I feel compassion for them, honestly and sincerely. But it doesn't mean I don't want to stop them. It doesn't mean I don't want to point out what they're doing is wrong. Doesn't mean I don't want to push them off the person they're holding down. But something in their life experiences brought them to the point where they thought standing on another human being was the right thing to do. So it's my job as a person on my path to enlightenment to not stand on other people and to point out when other people are doing it and to push them off if I can, to help the people up. And when I slip up and when I make a mistake and I step on someone, it is my job to stand back, to apologize, to own the act that I did, to not make excuses, not to defend myself, not to do any of that. It is just to say, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do this. How can I make it better? And if that answer is, go away and never speak to me again, then I go away and I never speak to that person again. Does that mean I may lose social contacts? Does that mean I may isolate myself in some ways? Yes, it does. Too bad. There are costs to breaking social mores. There are costs to acting in a discriminatory and a bigoted manner, even when you don't mean to. We can learn from this. We can grow and we can make things better than they were yesterday. And tomorrow, we can make them better than they were today. But if we don't try, if we don't accept the possibility that we're going to have to make mistakes, that we're going to have to be made uncomfortable, nothing's ever going to happen. And that's all that's being asked of the dominant members of our culture. You will be made uncomfortable. Whereas the people that are being oppressed are losing jobs, homes, and their lives. Being uncomfortable is a really small price to pay in the face of that now, isn't it? And to those that think that that price is too much, go away. We will sweep you into the dustbin of history where you belong. You will become the ever-shrinking minority of bigots. The rest of us will stride forward as equals into the future.